You have had someone switch on you with zero explanation, and the part that messes with your head is not the distance, it is the silence, because your brain can handle rejection. What it cannot handle is a social downgrade with no stated reason, like you missed a meeting where everyone agreed to treat you differently. Quick thing before we go deeper. We are building toward our first 1,000 subscribers, and if this kind of psychology is your thing, your subscription genuinely helps this reach people who need it. And if you want the algorithm to actually show this to someone who is stuck in that exact confusion, hit like. It is a small signal with an outsized effect. Now let us frame what is actually happening. When people start treating you differently without explaining why, it feels personal, but the mechanism is rarely personal in the way you think. It is usually not about what you did. It is about what your presence now predicts. Humans do not just react to behavior, they react to trajectories, and most social punishment is not a courtroom verdict. It is a quiet reallocation of attention, access, and warmth based on an updated model of who you are to them. I have watched this in friendships, workplaces, families, even long relationships. The moment someone privately updates their model of you, their behavior changes first, and their explanation, if it ever comes much later. Most people never connect those dots, so they blame their personality, or they spiral, or they over-apologize for crimes nobody named. Here is the first uncomfortable insight. A lot of the time, people are not withholding the reason from you. They are withholding it from themselves. Think about this for a second. If I asked someone, why are you suddenly colder to her? They will give a story. But that story is often a post hoc justification, not the real driver. The real driver is usually a feeling like threat, envy, contamination, or risk. And those feelings are social alarms. They fire before language. Then the conscious mind scrambles to build a narrative that makes the alarm seem rational. This is not mystical. It is basic neuroscience. Affect comes online fast. Interpretation comes later. In social life, that delay creates something brutal. A person can genuinely feel justified in treating you differently while being unable to clearly articulate why. So they default to vague cues, shorter replies, less eye contact, delayed invitations, busy without specifics. They are not necessarily being strategic, they are being emotionally consistent. Let me show you what I mean with a pattern you have probably lived. You have a friend who was warm when you were both struggling. Then something shifts. You start doing better, or you change a habit, or you get more confident, and suddenly the vibe is off. They still act polite, but the warmth is gone. If you ask what is wrong, you get, nothing, I am just tired. That is not always a lie. It is often the only explanation they can tolerate, because the true explanation would force them to face something about themselves. Now here is where it gets interesting. The social brain tracks something called relative rank, but not in a cartoonish way. It tracks who is rising, who is falling, who is stable, and who is unpredictable. And unpredictability is the key word. And people do not only distance from bad people, they distance from people who have become hard to place. Which brings me to the second insight. When you change, you create cognitive tax for the group. Some people respond to that tax by punishing you with ambiguity. There is a concept in social cognition called expectancy violation. When someone behaves outside the script you have for them, your brain has to spend resources updating the model. In small doses, that is interesting. In larger doses, it is stressful. And stress in social contexts often turns into control behaviors. Subtle correction, gossip, exclusion, or sudden boundaries that feel oddly one-sided. So if you used to be the agreeable one and now you say no, you have not just changed a behavior. You have changed what people can reliably extract from you. If you used to be the funny one and now you take your life seriously, You have changed the emotional service you provided. If you used to be the listener and now you need support, you have changed the contract without a meeting. And here is the brutal part. Most social contracts are unwritten on purpose, because if they were written, they would look embarrassing. You are allowed in this group as long as you do not outgrow us. You can be confident as long as it does not make me feel small. You can succeed as long as you still need me. Nobody wants to say that out loud, so they enforce it through vibes. Notice the pattern here. The less legitimate the reason sounds when spoken, the more likely it will be enforced silently. Now watch what happens when we apply this to workplaces. A colleague treats you like a peer. Yeah, then you start getting recognition, or you ask sharper questions, or you become less available. Suddenly you are difficult or not a team player. But nobody can point to what you actually did wrong. That is because the shift is about forecasted power. You are no longer easy to position beneath them or next to them or as harmless. So the group tries to restabilize the hierarchy. And if you are thinking, okay, but why not just tell me? Here is the third insight. Explanations are risky, and silence is a power move that looks like politeness. An explicit explanation creates a negotiable reality. If someone says, I feel threatened by your confidence, that can be discussed. If someone says, I do not like that you have boundaries now, they look petty. Silence avoids accountability. Silence lets them keep you in a state of self-interrogation. And self-interrogation is socially useful because it makes you easier to manage. This is where a lot of people break themselves. They treat social confusion as a problem to solve by becoming more pleasing. They send the extra text, they over-explain, they give more, they perform humility. And sometimes that works, but not for the reason you think. It works because you are signaling, do not worry, I will return to the old version of me. You are reducing their uncertainty. But here is a question that should make you pause. If returning to the old version of you restores the relationship, was the relationship attached to you or to your role? Let me add another layer most people miss. People do not only update their model of you based on your behavior, they update it based on what other people believe about you. This is reputation contagion, and it is one of the quietest reasons people start treating you differently. If someone hears a story about you, even a small one, it changes how they interpret everything you do after that. Same sentence, different meaning. Same facial expression, different meaning. That is confirmation bias in social form. Once a narrative exists, the brain filters for evidence that it is true. So sometimes the reason nobody tells you is not that you did something huge. It is that a story entered the system, and now telling you would reveal who started it, or that they believed it, or that they are easily influenced. Again, explanations are risky. Stay with me, because the next part recontextualizes everything. Sometimes the person treating you differently is not reacting to you at all. They are reacting to the version of themselves they become when they are around you. This is a mechanism I have seen destroy friendships that looked solid for years. You walk into a room and someone feels less attractive, less successful, less important, less in control. Not because you said anything, but because your presence activates an unwanted self-comparison. Social comparison theory is not just about envy, it is about identity stability. If your identity is built on, I am the responsible one, and you become responsible too, they lose a pillar. If their identity is I am the smart one, and you start speaking with clarity, they feel erased. And here is the part people hate admitting. It is easier to downgrade you than to rebuild themselves. So they do it quietly. They become colder. They nitpick. They withdraw. They form a little coalition. And because they do not want to see themselves as petty, their mind will generate a moral cover story. You are different. You are intense. You are hard to read. You are not the same. Now flip everything I just said, because there is a deeper layer beneath all of it. The real currency in relationships is not affection. It is predictability. Most people think closeness is built from shared values or shared history. That matters, but what actually regulates day-to-day treatment is prediction error. The social brain is constantly asking, can I predict what will happen if I lean toward this person? If I disagree? If I need something? If I set a boundary? When the answer becomes unclear, the safest move is distance. Not because they hate you, yet because uncertainty triggers the same avoidance circuits that protect us from physical risk. So if someone starts treating you differently, one possibility is not that you did something wrong. It is that you became harder to predict. That can happen in surprisingly innocent ways. You become more private. You stop oversharing. You stop explaining yourself. You get therapy and your patterns change. You stop reacting emotionally the way you used to. You become calm. And calm can look like hidden contempt to someone who is used to emotional transparency as proof of loyalty. Here is a specific scenario. You used to vent to a friend about your relationship. They felt close because you gave them access. Then you stop venting because you are working on your boundaries. They do not feel honored. They feel shut out. So they treat you like a stranger and tell themselves you changed for the worse. But what really happened is that the relationship was partly built on access to your unfiltered inner life. When that access ends, their security ends. Another scenario, you stop people-pleasing. You become polite but firm. And the people who benefited from your old permeability experience, that is betrayal. Not because you harmed them, but because you are no longer automatically prioritizing their comfort. The mind interprets loss of privilege as aggression. That is a real cognitive distortion. It is also why your new neutrality can provoke hostility. Now here is the retention point, because I want you to catch this the next time it happens. There are 3 categories of different treatment, and each category has a different hidden cause. Category 1 is recalibration. They are adjusting to your change, and if you stay consistent, they will settle. Category 2 is containment. They are trying to push you back into your old role. Category 3 is exit preparation. They have already decided to detach, and the coldness is them reducing emotional friction. Most people confuse Category 2 and Category 3, and that confusion costs them months. So how do you tell the difference without mind reading? You look for one thing. Do they respond to consistency, or do they respond to submission? If you stay consistent, calm, clear, and kind, a recalibrating person will slowly re-engage. A containing person will escalate pressure. They will test your boundaries harder, use guilt, recruit others, or act offended by your neutrality. An exit-preparing person will not escalate. They will fade. They will become impossible to pin down. They will keep everything fine while removing you from their future plans. Notice how none of that requires you to guess their secret thoughts. It is behavioral. Now let us tie the whole thing together with the meta pattern. People treat you differently when their internal cost-benefit model of you changes. And that model has 3 inputs: status, safety, and story. Status is your position relative to them. Safety is predictability and emotional risk. Story is the narrative they and others hold about you. If any one of those shifts sharply, treatment changes. If 2 shift at once, the change can be dramatic. If all 3 shift, you get the classic experience: sudden coldness, no explanation, and a strange sense that you walked into a parallel universe. Let me make this practical in a way that gives you actual leverage. When you sense the shift, do not chase warmth. First, stabilize your signal. That means you act like a person who is not confused about who they are. Same tone, same boundaries, same level of respect. People take cues from your self-definition. If you act apologetic and frantic, you confirm the story that you are unstable. If you act steady, you force the system to update around you. Second, ask one clean question that surfaces category, not a long emotional paragraph. One question. I have noticed we have been more distant lately. Is there something you want to address with me? Then you stop talking. The mechanism behind this is simple. It forces them to choose between honesty and avoidance. And the choice tells you what you need to know. If they engage with specifics, you are probably in recalibration. If they punish you for asking, you are in containment. If they dodge repeatedly, you are in exit preparation. Third, and this is the part that feels almost too cold, you decide what kind of relationships you are willing to have. Relationships that require you to remain smaller, softer, or more confused to maintain access are not relationships. They are arrangements. Now here is the ultimate insight I wish more people understood early. Unexplained different treatment is often the social system testing whether you will abandon your own perception. Because if you abandon your perception, you become easy to control. You become the person who can be trained by vibe shifts. And once you see that, you stop panicking and start observing. You treat it like data. You start noticing who can handle your growth without punishing you. You start noticing who needs you to be legible in a narrow way. You start noticing who uses silence as a way to keep moral superiority without having to make an argument. And then something strange happens. The moment you stop begging for clarity from unclear people, clear people find you. Not because of magic, because your behavior becomes a filter. You stop rewarding ambiguity with over-effort. You stop paying emotional taxes to stay in rooms where your presence is treated like a problem. If this hit a nerve, I want you to do one experiment this week. The next time someone's energy shifts, do not rush to repair. Pause and ask, did my status change? Did my predictability change? Or did a story about me change? Then watch what they do when you stay consistent. Because the most important skill in adult life is not being liked. It is knowing when the silence is information and when it is an invitation to betray yourself.